I'm from Michigan. Johnny Apple's is from Michigan. I'm raised on Johnny Apple. Well, you don't know shit about it. Really? I grew up looking at it's up. You know the Apple. I think the Apple is really oh, yeah, Jeffrey's a happy one. Well, inside of a couple of alcohol. I see what it was saying. I learned more about the Apple. You know who invented graphing before that? You couldn't even figure out how to get an apple. The Chinese. The second millennium. I don't even know what second millennium is. Second millennium? Year 1000 before the continent. Second millennium. They invented graph. None of Johnny Appleseed seeds because they're actually I'm giving you away the sport. This is a rule, but the sport you get 60 pages of stuff. I only gave you a couple pages. Pages on the thin this is good. What you get is you went to where he was from, not people that know him, what he was doing. You trade the stuff. There were books about it. He's done like several books like that. There's a statue of Johnny Appleseed up there between the 10th century. A statue of Johnny Appleseed in the corner of Cousin House. I want to go through it. You can walk there. I know. I'm going to go look for him. You walk right down. I know. I'm trying to hide it.
Well, it was just a regular finish. It wasn't anything special. Oh yeah. Okay, just came from lunch. The bear moms. It's like one of those hysterical things about early because like so early. I was saying to them that I don't know if you remember this, but in 2019, right before COVID started, that winter we tried an experiment where we had Minha right at the show. And people would bring Poland into Pilch and we would do Minha. And it was so, I thought it was so great because then people were just here and we could just, there was never a problem with Minha, nothing was fun. So it was just it was a nice way of getting the crowd that was already here to participate. But the problem was, or the problem that Adam worried about is that would people come back for Mari? Yeah. But if we started Mari, like if we technically did Mari after Havdalah, we could do it on Zoom. And then, but I don't know if we want to do that. But if we only came back for Mari, we would only have to come back like half an hour before Havdalah. Do a little preview, do a little Mari all the day. There'd still be someone coming back, which I actually don't mind them coming back. It's just when it's so early, it's ridiculous. I went home to change, and then I came here. Like I went home there, mom to my house, changed, came back. Yeah. So I just like walk a few blocks. I ran to the Bronze on my way home. I assume you're reading.
We use neither of those Victorias today. I don't know whether it's
I think they're out because they were in there and they put Pilch in there for right now.
Oh.
I think.
I don't think you could read from Pilch this morning.
No, you read from Greenstein this morning.
Okay.
But Greenstein's in here. I think I think the guys just know that we prefer pilch for Minha. We just made room, is my guess. Hi, Hector. Oh, it's time. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Perfect. Great. No questions, right? I also believe. Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, that room is now a cafe, so I don't think any.
No, not all the buttons from there, unless somebody wanted to take them home.
It's not? Well, there's also more over there. It is, but it's yes. I don't know. Do you want to document that? Whatever you want. Somebody else want to document that? Want to do it? Great. Okay.
Okay, sold.
Thanks. Okay. But let me turn this so that you can document from the opposite direction. I don't know why this thing keeps popping up, but.
I don't really know how to use this book very well. Does anybody have a?
Welcome, everyone. We are going to begin on page
214 in this one.
214. I always say 264, and I always know I'm wrong. So 214 in the Siddur.
Ashrei Shvevita Chod Halalu Chasela Ashrei Ham Shakachalo Ashrei Ham Shadana Eloha Tila Vinavid. Tila Danai Berpi Verakal Baksar Shem Kashialam Baeb and Naknu Bareka Metavialam Hallelujah Uvalatzion Goel Yoshve Pesach Yaakov Naum Adonai. Yeah, Takados Yoshepti Lot Israel, the Karaz El Zabiyamar, Kados, 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 and the Knights Willem the Color Arts Givodo. Utisaini Ruach Ashmar Achare Kol Ra'ash Gadol, Baruch Kavod, Adonai Mim Komo. Adonai Yimlo, Leolam Vaed. V'yivdekavaka Yodea Shemecha, Ki lo yazavta darshaka Adonai, Adonai chafez la'aman tzidko, Yadil v'torah v'yadir, Yikadav Yikadash Shemei Rabba, Ve'alma Adibrachi Rutev, Yom Lich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayedech Lebe Yisrael, V'galav Izman Kariv, Imru, Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabba Mevarach, L'olam Olmei Almaya, Yiparak Yishtabach, Yipar V'yitaram V'yinasev, Yitadar V'yitalev, Yichalal Shemei Dechucha, B'richu, Le'elam Min Chol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbachata V'nechmata, Damiram Be'alma, V'imru, Amen. Va'ani tefilati lecha Adonai ratzon Elohim b'rachastecha einenu b'emet yishecha. V'yehi ben so Aharon v'yomer Moshe. Zom Adonai
haven't done this in this room in so long. Since I was an intern, I think.
I'm pretty sure I left my glasses.
Yeah.
Where
They
she
can
did,
get
right there.
smushed by, but if they're gonna go, getting smushed by a Torah is not a bad way to do it.
I was like being sat on or something.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, you may be seated. Haley, you want to take the first Aliyah? You know it. It hasn't changed since you've done it the last time. Hey, do you want the second Aliyah? Trying to give to people who are visiting.
I actually have it.
Marlise, you want the third
There, if you
Aliyah?
want it.
Okay, great.
In case I forgot.
Yeah, totally. ותגלה ותראה מלכותו למצרים קרוב ויבחן פלטתנו פלטתם עבד ישראל לחנוך אסר רחמים ורצון ונאמר אמן. הכבוד הוא כבוד לתורה תעמוד. אלה בת.
Page 317.
Rachel.
דוב ורחל. לליה ראשון. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
ברוך שאתה תראה למועצה וקדושתו.
ואתם מלכים בין עליכם, חיים כולכם היום.
ואתם לכם כולכם היום. Page 317. Beginning of the book of Exodus, Parashat Shemot.
Baruch hu Adonai Baruch
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ולשפוט בני ישראל הבאים מצרימה את יעקב איש ביתו באו רבן שמעון לוי ויהודה יששכר זבולון ובנימין דן ונפתלי גד ואשר ויהי כל נפש יוצא ירך יעקב שפים נפש ויוסף היה במצרים ויעמד יוסף וכל אחיו וכל אדורהו בני ישראל לרוב וישרצו וירבו ויעצמו במאוד מאוד תמלא הארץ אותם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet b'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. You took a laugh. Ta'amad. Amiti Yael bat
Abraham u'Martaleh.
Abraham v'Martaleh Aliyah Sheni. Page 318, verse 8.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. ויקום מלך חדש על מצרים אשר לירא את יוסף ויאמר אל עמו הנה עם בני ישראל רבצו ממנו הבה נדחק מעלו פן ירבה והיה כי תקרן מלחמה בנוסף גם הוא על שונאינו ונלחם בנו ועלה מן הארץ וישימו עליו שרי מיסים למען לענותו בסבלותם ויבן הרמיס קונות לפרעה את פיתום ואת רמסס וכאשר יענו אותו כן ירבה וכן יפרוץ ויקוץ מפני בני ישראל.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu et torato. Baruch
קראתם את
asher Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ta'amad.
Malka bat Moshe v'Masi.
Malka bat Moshe v'Masi Leliyah Shlishi. You can say it.
Other side.
You were on the right side. The correct side.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, so with your talus.
Okay. Okay. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamin. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'avihidu Mitzrayim et Bnei Israel b'farech v'yamaruth chayehem b'avodah kasha b'chomer v'venim v'chol avaraha b'asadeh et kol avaratam shavdu v'hem b'farech v'yomer melech Mitzrayim lam yaldot ha'ivriot asher shem ha'achad shifra v'shem ha'sheni puaha v'yomer v'yaldachin et ha'ivriot u'riten al avnaim אם בין הוא והמיתן אותו ואם באתי וחיה ותראינה המילדות את האלוהים ולא עשו כאשר דבר להן מלך מצרים בת חיינה תילדים.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet V'chei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Please rise for lifting and wrapping. Before we do that, does anybody have an El Male today? Anybody have a yard site? Okay. Yeah, just grab Eric's tallis.
Ready?
מחזיקים בה ותומכי המאושר עץ חיים המחזיקים בה ותומכי המאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום יין 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 יין
Is there another mushroom? I didn't hear.
No. Page 221, please remain standing.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kinuskav Shemo Lavado, Odo Oleris Bashamayim, Ashki Binu Adonai Elecha, Vinashun Kadesh Yamenu Kekedem. Yep. We've had our issues with that one.
That's true. Page 222, Chati Kaddish into the whispered Amidah, page 223.
Yikadel v'yikadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ba'amadi v'rachirute, v'yamlif machute, v'chayechon, v'yamechon, v'chayedecho v'Yisrael, v'galav izman kari, v'yamru, Amen. Yeheshime Rabba Mivarach Elamame Amaya, Yiparak Yishtabach, Yitpar Yitramavit Nasev, Yitadar, Yitalev, Yahol Shmid Kucha, Brichu, Laela Min Kol Birchata Bishirata, Tush Birchata Vnechmata, Damiram Belma, Vimru, Amen.
Not your faith, family. That please continue at your own pace. After you begin repetition on page 223, and then we're going to get on page 225 next week.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Ha'el Hagadol, v'Hagibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gamel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasei Avo, U'Mevi Goel of Nevin Lehem, L'man Shmo B'Ahava, Melech Hozer, Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, atah Gibor Lilam Adonai, Michayim Eitim atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv Haruach, Morid HaGeshem, Mechachel Chaim v'Chesed, Michayim Eitim Rachabim Rabim, Somech Noflim, Rafeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Ukayem Unatol, Shanei Afar, Micha Mocha Baal Gavurot, Umidom Melach, Melech Mitum Mechayem Otzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'aman atah L'chayot Meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaMeitim. Nagadesh Hashem Kabbalam Kashem Kamaktishim, Otel Bashmei Marov, Kakatu V'yad Neviyakarakav, Zav Yamar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzularetz Kavodo, Liumatam, Baruch Yomeru. Baruch Adonai Mim Kamo, Divrei Kachaka, Katuv Lemor. Yimlokan Elilam, Al Haksin Lavador, Hallelujah, Ludor Vador, Nagid, Gadlechel, Netzach Nitzachim, Kudushakta Nagdish, Bishivchacha, Eloheinu, Mepinu Lo Yemush Elam, Vaed, Ki El Melekado, Vekadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Ata Echad, B'Shimcha Echad, Umika Amchal Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz, B'Tiferet Gedula, V'Ateret Yeshua, V'Yom Kedusha, La'amcha Natata, Abraham Yagel, Yitzhak Yiranim, Yaakov Uvanav, Yanuchu Vo, Menucha Ahava, Unadava, Menucha Emet, Ve'emuna, Menucha Shalom, Shalva V'Hashke Shvavetach, Menucha Shalema, R'Shata Rotzeh Ba, Yakiru Banecha, V'Yedu Ki כי מאיתך היא מנוחתם, ועל מנוחתם יקדישו את שמך. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך. ותן חלקנו בתורתך, סבנו מטובך. ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר לבנו לעבדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו, בעבר רצון שבת קדשך, ואנוכו וישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. ורצה אדוני אלוהינו בימך ישראל תפילתם, והשב עבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודה ישראל עמך, ותחזינה עינינו. בשובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לה. Hato kilo chalu rachamecha, amrachim kilo tamu chatzadech me'olam kavinu la, v'al kulam yitbarach yitramam shimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam va'ed, v'chol hachayim yudu chasela, v'halalu et shimcha v'emet, v'ha'el yeshuatenu ezratenu sela, Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ucha na'el lehodod, shalom rav al Yisrael amcha, ועל כל יושבי תבל תשים לעולם, כי אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך לרק את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המרק את עמו ישראל בשלום. צדקתך צדק לעולם, תורתך אמת, צדקתך אלוהים עד מרוב אשר עשית גדולות אלוהים מכמוך, צדקתך בהררי אל, ישפטך תהום רבה, אדם ובהמה תושיע אדוני. יקדע ויקדע שמי רבה, ועמד דברך יורתי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ובימיכון, וחייתך בישראל, בעלה בזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתברך ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירם בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. תתחילו סלוסו ובאוסון דכל ישראל, קדם ובאוסון דבשמיא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיים, וחיים עלינו ולכל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח, לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית שלו. ככתוב תורכך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא יברח יורתי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ובימיכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. שמי רבה מברך לעולם עלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, אמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיים, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו אמן.
We are going to go next door, so her hall, which is actually two doors down, for a little nash and some learning. So if you go over to that room, let me see if I can tell this setup from here. There's gonna be, it's pretty obvious that there's another computer somewhere. I'm gonna sit in front of the computer so that I can teach the people who are on live stream, but feel free to grab something to eat and then to come to the tables. I know this is for some of you a new configuration of Sudash Machine, and for some of us this is going back to the old configuration. So you'll figure out how to do it, but we're gonna be in Hirsch Hall. So you can leave all your stuff here and go to Hirsch Hall, and then we'll come back in here for Mari. You don't have to bring anything. Nope, you're good.
Right.
I just put it back the way it was when I did it. Yes. Unless it's a Sunday and I'm 8. With Robert. There's like sometimes you yeah, you can talk to oh that's so sweet. I can have you I think it's Rana. I don't know. So I can okay, yeah. Yeah. I think they moved them so they can put the other cars in for today. Because we don't have a coach park right now, there's nothing until we've got cars everywhere. So yeah, so I think they're just making room for other cars to be stored while Hills is not being used. Yeah, let me know. Oh, thanks. No, you watch him.
Shabbat shalom.
No, you don't. No, you're good. You're good. Stay there. I'll just the next to get ready. Shabbat shalom. I know. No. I'm sorry. Thank you. I literally came from one to here. Yeah, sure. Can you share? Okay, great. Let me get one for Rosa. No, I'm gonna sit near the group. You okay? Can you guys share it? Okay. Sorry, I didn't make enough Oh, I need one.
You didn't memorize it?
Kind of important. I'm just so used to seeing a computer and thinking, oh, it's on the computer. It's not.
I thought you memorized it.
Well, sure. Okay. Welcome everyone. It's a very bizarre feat because I can't see everybody on this side, but if anybody has anything to say, just yell from this angle. So we're gonna study the beginning of the beginning of Exodus, which is what we just read, what Mark just read for a moment ago. The Shemot is really a fabulous, not only book, but a fabulous concept. If you heard Jackie Honig Josh earlier this morning, you heard her talk about how okay. We don't really need the speakers in here, but where are the speakers? Okay. All right. Anyway, in Genesis, we are individual people. And then when we get to Exodus, we're a community. We are a nation, right? And the whole idea is that the beginning of Exodus is the birth of Moshe, and then leads us into becoming an even bigger nation. And that happens when we go through the sea and we come out on the other side a full nation, right? Because we've been in slavery together. You probably all know, this is not the topic that we're going to get into today, but you probably all know of stories where when people go through trauma, we can think of what's going on in Israel right now, right? When people go through trauma, there is more likelihood that they're going to come out on the other side together as opposed to fractured, right? That if there are like experiences, that you come together closely because you find that support and that love within one another, as opposed to the fractured nature of the stories of the families in Genesis, who we do learn a lot from, right? We learn a lot from Abraham and Sarah and all the rest of the characters. And they're flawed, which is great because that teaches us that as humans, we can be leaders and also flawed, but they're not cohesive. When we get into Exodus, we're all of a sudden a cohesive people. So this is the beginning of that. This, you will not see cohesion yet, but this is the beginning of it, right? The first chapter of this book of Shemot is where we start to understand that this is going to be part of the thesis of the overall nature of Exodus. So we're actually going to focus in on one particular verse that you've probably all heard before, and it's that verse of that there arose a new king who did not know Joseph. It's an interesting verse for a lot of reasons that we'll go into today, but it's also very interesting to think about what does it mean that a leader comes to power and doesn't know the person who came before them, right? What would it have been like if I became the associate rabbi at Temple Beth Am and didn't know Ari Lucas before I came in? You don't need to know the person personally. I happen to, right? But you don't need to know the person personally, but to know what they did, to know where they excelled, to know what projects you're picking up of theirs, to know areas that they didn't have as much interest in that maybe you can add to, right? That's an important part of succession, is to be able to know the people who came before you, to be able to pick up where they left off in wonderful ways, hopefully. So I'm going to give you a bit of context, and then we're going to focus in on that verse. So the first verse we're going to look at here is chapter 1 of Exodus, verse 5. Vayehi kol nefesh yotzei Yerach Yaakov, the number of people who came out of literally the loins of Jacob, Shiv'im nafesh, were 70 souls. Now, does that mean 70 people? Obviously, we hope so. But the fact that it says nafesh and not anashim, it doesn't say 70 people, it says 70 souls. The Yosef hayav Mitzrayim, and Joseph was in Egypt. So again, this is just giving, not only am I giving you context, but this is the beginning of the book is also giving us context. Joseph died and all of his brothers and all of that generation. Uvenei Yisrael paru v'yishretzu v'yirbu v'ya'atzmu b'ma'od me'od. And Bnei Yisrael and the people of Israel were fertile and prolific, and they multiplied and they increased. V'timaleh ha'aretz otam, and the whole land was full of them. Now, we could see this if we wanted to in an anti-Semitic almost language, right? Like they were too big for us. They were overrunning the land. But to us, as a part of this people, we see this as a really beautiful thing, right? They were populating the earth after going through everything that happened with the famine and all of that. They were becoming a people. They were growing themselves, which is a beautiful thing. This is the verse that we're going to focus in on. Vayakom melech chadash, a new king arose, al Mitzrayim, which is interesting, on Egypt, right? Which is an interesting way of saying that. Doesn't say inside Egypt, but literally upon Egypt. So a new king arose upon Egypt, or in the English here it says over Egypt, asher lo yada et Yosef, that did not know Joseph. Right? And again, as I mentioned before, that's surprising, right? Because just 4 verses ago, we were talking about how Joseph was actually already in Egypt. So how did this king not know Joseph? Or was he ignoring Joseph? Or had he never heard of Joseph? Or was this king someone who didn't really know people and was kind of a black sheep who had come to power? We're gonna see a bunch of different commentaries on them. Vayomer el amo, hine am bnei Israel rav ve'atzum mimenu. And he said to his people, look at bnei Israel, the children of Israel, they are too numerous for us. So that line that I mentioned before, that to us seems like such a blessing, did seem to this king to be one that he was fearful of. Right? Wow, they're really powerful. We need to do something about it. Now, it then goes on to talk about slavery and all these things that you know from the Exodus story, but we're going to stop here for now. I gave you one more verse, but we're going to stop here for now and go on to the commentaries. So what do you think it means for a king to not have known Joseph? That a king arose on Egypt and didn't know Joseph?
He knew Joseph. He just didn't like him.
Okay.
His policies or that he was Jewish or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, Tim. Great. Right. So maybe he just didn't even know, right? Had I not been an intern here or had I not been from LA, it's very possible I wouldn't have known Rabbi Lucas, right? There's no reason for me to know him, but I happen to know him. So it's very possible that someone could come into a community, or in this case, come into power and not know what came before him because he's from somewhere else completely. Other thoughts? Yeah, Rosa? Great. Joseph might just be another dude, right? Like why should anybody know Joseph? We know Joseph because half a book was written about him, but and also a musical. But it might not be that everybody else knows Joseph, right? It's very possible that the kingdom was so big that why would anybody actually know him? Well, not yet. I mean, he did at yes, he died at the beginning of this page that I gave you. He died, but when the Pharaoh had come into power, most likely he was still alive. We are being told the context that Joseph died, and then there was a king. You're correct, but most likely, generations obviously overlap. So most likely this king was around when Joseph was alive. But yes, you are right in terms of chronology. Yeah. Uh-huh. Sure. like what Bob's saying, that enough time had passed that who knows who this guy actually was. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. Right. And that's the thing that, it depends on how the story is written, right? Which is why in today's day, so many stories are written from kind of the underdog perspective of famous stories where we know the main protagonist, right? Because you want to know the other side. The musical, I don't know why I'm referencing so many musicals right now, but the musical Wicked, right, was written as a way of understanding a whole different side of the Wizard of Oz story, right? So it does depend on how you tell the story to know the perspective of it. And so you're right, Marlise, that it's possible that enough time had passed. We think Joseph is a really important guy, but maybe this king just had no idea that he even existed, right? Okay, so let's go on to some of these commentaries. I quite literally just brought a bunch of commentaries and we're going to go through them. There was no there's no, as Rabbi Shapiro would say, bow to be put on this at the end to necessarily say like, oh, because the commentator said this, this is what it definitely means. But I wanted to give you a sense of what commentators think it might be saying, that this king arose on Egypt and didn't know Joseph. Okay, so Rashi says, now there arose a new king, Vayako Melech Chadash. Rav and Shmuel, two teachers, differed in their interpretation of these words. One said that he really was a new king, and the other one said that it was the same king, but he made new edicts. So what Rashi, who's quoting these other teachers from the Talmud, from Sota, is saying, he's saying that, okay, sure, yeah, he was a new king. He really didn't know what else was going on. But then Shmuel is saying, well, he might have been the same guy when Joseph was around, but now that Joseph is gone, he has new rules. And the only reason that seemed interesting to me is because if we look at the next verse, after we're told that this new king arose, we do see that he's starting to get a little afraid of the people of Israel, right? And so maybe it is the fact that these new rules came about once he started to kind of understand what the people were going to be capable of. Tell me. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Which is funny because we're going to get to a whole story of denial. Very good. You started the pun thing earlier, right? So now I got to play up on it. Okay. So Rashi then goes on to say that Asher lo yada, who did not know, right? He comported himself as though he did not know him. So this is what Irv was saying, right? And actually back to what Temi just said, that there is a world in which this was the same guy, the same physical human being, right? Michael Becker is still Michael Becker, but if something happens to Michael Becker, he might have a different perspective on the event, the people around him, whatever. And that's what they're saying about this king, right? That he was the same physical guy, but now all of a sudden he had a new perspective and a new outlook on what was going on. Yeah. Yeah.
California, 20 years. State's demographic went from majority white to minority.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of repercussions.
Uh-huh.
In my favor of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Similarly, they get a group coming in,
Mm-hmm.
more people.
Mm-hmm.
Threatens.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important.
I'm so glad you said the word threaten, because I hadn't used that word yet, and that's exactly what I was getting at, right? That the king could have been the same person, but felt newly threatened by that which was happening in his midst. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I have no greater interpretations.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, AJ. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Right. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Sure. 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 That's an interesting question. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah. Right. Yeah, I can't think of a place in the Torah where it's saying something that we mean the opposite. In the Talmud, it happens all the time, especially around matters of death and matters of sex. So the rabbis, when they're discussing sexual matters, they have lots of euphemisms that are used as a way of talking about it without talking about it. And then same with death, because of the evil spirit, you don't want to conjure up, the Melech HaMavet, the angel of death, because you're talking about it too much. So that's superstition. But the but I can't think of a place in the Torah where euphemisms are used in the same kind of way. But it's a very fascinating question. Okay, turn the page over. One day I'll learn to put page numbers on my source sheets. That day is not this week. I know, but then you don't know what page I'm talking about. Anyway, the one that says Ibn Ezra. So Ibn Ezra says, now there arose a new king, Vayakom Melech Hadash. We're really just focusing on those words over and over again, which is why I keep hearing them. This is to be taken literally, without any embellishments. Torah reads, and there arose Vayakom, because the new king was not of the royal seed. Right, we hear this all the time now with like the royal family in England, right? If someone gets married and they're not within the royal family, as far wide as that spreads, all of a sudden there's lots of talk around how is that person going to be part of the royal family, and so that seems to be what Ibn Ezra is thinking is actually happening here, that this is a king who came from his own merits, his own leadership abilities, and he is now a new king, but he's new because he wasn't a prince who then became a king. Right? So new in the sense of new to this kind of leadership, or new to royalty, not new to Joseph. It is like that my son hath stirred up my servant to lie in wait against me. That's from Shmuel. That's just the proof text for this idea. So here, new means he was new to the job, right? He had never done this before. He was new to being a king. And so that makes all kinds of sense that he didn't know Joseph. If you're not in a place of leadership, how would you know some random Joe Schmo who lives in your area, in your what's it called, kingdom? Thank you. How would you know someone who if you're not above, if you're on the same level as Joseph, how are you supposed to know Joseph? He might be from a completely different side of town. How are you supposed to know him, right? You expect from a leader to at least recognize names, right? We talk about this in shul leadership all the time. You might not know a person intimately, but you at least have seen their name on a high holiday ticket, or you have a general sense of who the members are of the shul, right? Like that kind of knowledge exists when you're someone who is dealing with a lot of people. But if you're a quote just congregant, you might not know also that other random congregant who only comes on Rosh Hashanah, right? Because you're not dealing with names in the same kind of way. So we wouldn't have expected this king to know people who were on his same level before he became leadership. I had never heard this as an interpretation before, so I was very interested in that. Okay, Chizkuni says, I think we're going to do two more. Chizkuni says, Vayakol Melech Hadash, some commentators citing the fact that the death of the previous king has not been reported, right? We know that Joseph died and that Jacob died, but we don't actually know that the king who came before this guy died. claim that the Torah speaks about the same king, right? It's the same actual person. That's why it says body, but that his attitude vis-a-vis the Israelites underwent such a change that he might as well have been a different king altogether. That all of a sudden this perspective changed on the people, whether based on how he was interacting with them or how they were interacting with one another. That it's the same guy, but his interpretation of them changed. So the fact that this new king, right, that it might actually be the same king, because we don't know that another king died. So it's possible it's actually just the same guy. Okay, this next one is quite interesting. I thought it was a little bit interesting in terms of what's going on right now politically in Israel, not necessarily in terms of October 7th, but just politically. Vayakom melech chadash, a new king dynasty arose. So the Dad Zakanim is adding this word, basically kingdom, not just king, but that a whole dynasty arose and they were new. This was the first pharaoh, right? We don't actually hear of another pharaoh before this. We might hear the word pharaoh, but that just means leader, right? That's not necessarily the name, but this is the first time that we're actually experiencing this category of person. The Egyptians suggested to him to join the Hebrews politically, right? To be on their side. They seem to be very powerful. They seem to have an idea of how to move things forward, especially coming out of a famine, right? They seem to have an idea of what it might mean to be successful in the land that they're all living in. The king said to them, "How can we do this, seeing that thus far we have prospered thanks to them?" Meaning, if we know they're doing things that we're benefiting from, if I join them, then I'm doing the work. I'm not necessarily benefiting from the work. I'm doing the work to, I guess, within yourself, you get to benefit a bit, but you're also working. You're not just sitting back and benefiting from the work that others are doing for you. The Egyptians did not like this and removed this new king from the throne for a period of 3 months. After this is a complete midrash, by the way. This is not in Torah. The rabbis wrote this to explain things themselves. After the 3 months had elapsed, the king told the people that he was willing to change his attitude on the subject and to oppose the Hebrews, right? So at first he said, okay, maybe actually I will be on their side. Maybe I will help them become even more prosperous than they already are. And then for some reason, 3 months went by and all of a sudden he was opposed to them. This is why the Torah writes a new king. Okay, so again, kind of just adding on to that idea that maybe it's the same person with a different edict. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna read one last one, and then happy to take a few questions before we bench. So this is from the Eitz Chaim, the chumash that's in the chapel, where we'll go back in just a second. Pharaoh knew that Joseph had saved Egypt, but he didn't care. Right, so it's not that he didn't know him, it's that he didn't have any interest in that which he had done, right? Which, by the way, is just a very human thing. You might not like everybody, even if you know what they've done, you might not necessarily like their decision.
Also, he's not going to get anything from him.
From who?
The king is not going to get anything from Joseph. Joseph's done from the standpoint. He already solved the problem. There's no reason to have a need.
Right, sure. He did not let the information change his outlook. Through much of Jewish history, the people's well-being depended on the goodwill of a ruler. When the leadership changed, the fortunes of the Jewish community often changed as well. Pharaoh begins by refusing to acknowledge Joseph and later refusing to acknowledge God and in saying, "Who is the eternal that I should heed God?" This is when all the plagues are happening. So what we're seeing here is that, first of all, this is why I love looking into commentary. We have no clue what this verse means from Torah, right? That's what's so interesting, is that some of these commentators might agree, but we have no idea what it means that a new king arose. We have lots of thoughts, just as you have lots of thoughts, right? There's lots of hypotheses around what it might mean. But the reason that I thought that this Eitz Chaim commentary was particularly interesting is because it wasn't just that he was new or that he was the same guy with different edicts. This is actually, in my opinion, worse, right? That he did know the guy, that he didn't change, but he didn't care. And that there was something almost manipulative about then that relationship of saying, oh, I don't know him. Well, you do know him. You just don't care to know what he's doing and how he might be benefiting your land or your people, and then later on has that same relationship with God. So as I said before we started, there's no I didn't come up with an answer as to what this verse means, but I think it's interesting for all of us to imagine that there are lots of verses that we read just like this one and think to ourselves, oh, okay, he didn't know Joseph. Maybe they were different generations, maybe time elapsed, whatever. But could it also have been that we're dealing with humans here, and that we're dealing with two humans who just didn't really want to know one another? And what does it mean to have lived through a leadership time like that? Yeah, tell me. Right, exactly. We don't have enough. Exactly. And that, to me, actually, that's the fun of opening a new book, right? We read Exodus every year, but that's the fun of reading a new book the same every single year, is that this is a line I've read a gazillion times, but I haven't necessarily taken a deep dive like I did with all of you today into this one particular verse. So, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. 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 And I think that's part of what we're talking about here, is that who knows if he had even had the opportunity to know who Joseph was. That's exactly right. Okay, we're gonna bench. Did someone eat bread who can lead us in benching? I'm not gonna do that right now. Did anybody eat bread who can lead us in Z-Moon? Great. Gary's gonna lead us. We're on page 47. Shuv Adonai es shevitenu, kafikim ba'negev, hazorim bedima, berina yitzoru, halach yelechu b'chol, lo shemech shechadara, voya berina, lo ze'alu motav.
Barai Nebarech,
Yeshua Nevarach Metavi Adolam.
Yishem Adonai Barak Mi'atad Olam, Bershut Mevarnan, Baruch Shechanu Mishalo,
Baruch Eloheinu Shachanu Mishalav Tiva Chayinu.
Baruch Eloheinu Shechanu Mishalo, B'Tavo Chayinu,
Baruch Baruch Shema. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Hazan es haolam kulo b'tuvo v'chen v'chesed u'rachamim. Hu noten lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasto. Uktuvo hagadol. Tami lo chatzalanu ve'ayatzalanu ma'azon le'olam v'havur shemo hagadol. Yihozanu parnes lahakol. Umetim lakol umechim azon lechol briotav asher bara. Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol. Koch to Gary. We're gonna go next door and do Mari. So people can throw away their trash and all those kinds of things. Everything else can be left here, but we'll meet up again for Mari and the
I tried. We may do it later. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, hold on, I get out my stuff.
At the end, it's like the last thing that we do. Oh. It's the middle, 264. So on page 279 at the end, then you go to page 216. Which we did during Minha,
Right.
and it's just that page again. But all you do is.
So we do, hold on, so the Amida ends, we do Chati Kaddish.
Yeah, then you do Vahinoam, but it's silent until the thingy, the carrot.
Right.
And then you do Vetakodesh Yishem Tila Yisrael Omar. Like you just basically do the carrots on page 216.
Definitely don't know how to make it up. Going through where?
I believe it's decaf. Just 216. It's only page 216.
Ending.
At Sela.
And then it goes back
and
to.
And it goes back to page. Oh no, I don't know why I just said that. It goes to the bottom of page 27, to the middle of page 270.
Goes through Yadir, right?
Yes. I don't know why I said so. And then you go to Kaddish on page 280, but I'll call that page.
It'll be interesting.
I mean, I can also do it if you want.
Doesn't matter.
Don't know. Let's get everybody back over here. Do you want me to mention anything about sugar on Tuesday? Okay. We'll say Hamakom to you at the end. That's technically net Mari that marked it up for you. And also put that.
Mari for not Mari.
No, I forgot to do that earlier.
Great.
Ayla, do you want us to look your dad and brother are coming? We just need 2 more. Oh, actually, did I count myself?
I count you.
Okay, you're at Ayla. Yeah, they are coming. Oh, yeah, right.
I count you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I just didn't count myself. Okay, we're going to begin Mariv on page 264. Please rise.
V'hurachlim michaper avam lo yashchit v'hir bala shiva povlei erkol chamator Hashem echanenu yom korenu Baruch et Adonai hamvorach Baruch Adonai morach le'olam va'ed Baruch Umavir yomu maybe Laila Mavdil ben yom ben Laila night va'ot shema chai v'kayam tamidim lachalenu le'olam va'ed Baruch Adonai hama'ariv aravihim abatim V'avtecha t'sim rimenu li'olamim Baruch Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Lechem Emet. ומלכותו רצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל חנו ושירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך מלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נוראתי לא תוסף פלא מלכותך ראו בניך בו קיים לפני משה זה אלי ענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדר יעקב גלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו שמור צאתנו ואנו לחיים ושלום את אוויר עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד ברוך אתה אדוני כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו יקדע ויקדש שמי רבה ועמד דברה קרתי ומלך מלכותי בחיי חול ובימך ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה בזמן כארי ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה ברך לעולם עמי עמי יתברך וישבח ויתברך ותשמע מנעשה ויתהדר ויתעלה ותעלה שמי קודשה בריחוהו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן
יתגדל ויקדש מרבה, ועמד דברה כרתי במליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחייך בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמר וברך לעולם עמי מיה, יתברך וישבח ודבר בתורה מתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל על שמי קודשה בריחו, לעולם מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמרם בימיו ואמרו אמן. וינום אדוני אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננה עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננהו יושב בסדר. יקראני בניהו עמו אנוכי בשרה אכלתהו ואכבדהו אורך ימים אשביעהו ואראהו בישועתי אורך ימים אשביעהו ואראהו בישועתי.
We're back on page 216.
ובא לציון גואל ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 האצבע בכל ארץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח ואשמע אחרי כל רעש גדול ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר.
280.
It's easy for you to see. יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה ועמד דברה כרתי במליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמר וברך לעולם עמי מיה, יתברך וישבח ודבר בתורה מתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל על שמי קודשה בריחו לעולם מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמרם בימיו ואמרו אמן. תתקבל תלתנו ואותנו לכל ישראל קדם אבוהון דבישמעיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח אותו. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה למלך כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אחד ושמו אחד.
Mordecai, page 282.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה קברתי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.
Michael, in just a moment,
Sati.
thank you. In just a moment, we will do some announcements. If you want me to read the announcement now, I will. So in just a few moments, we will do Havdalah, is what I meant. But I have 3 minutes before we can do Havdalah. So I'll do a few announcements, and then we'll do a little moment for. We'll do a little moment. A few things. Number one, on January 13th, One LA is having their fundraiser. That is here in the building. You have to RSVP. Please sign up. Some of you have already done so. Please sign up. The choir is having their inaugural performance. So you should come and see me wave my arms and them sing very beautifully. And January 9th, 18th really through the 21st, but beginning the morning of the 19th, is Kol Tefillah. If you have not participated in Kol Tefillah before, this might be the last year we do it. So you should participate. It's going to be really special. It is a complete weekend full of music and learning and different modalities around tefillah, and how tefillah can not just be standing with a book in front of you, but really expression through spirituality in all different kinds of ways. There's going to be movement, there's going to be meditation, there's going to be quote regular prayer in terms of singing and in the sanctuary. We are bringing in a woman. Her name is Chana Raskin. She has a fabulous story. The very Cliff Notes version is that Spark Notes, Cliff Notes, they're the same things, right? Version is that okay, there we go. Is that she grew up in Hasidic Brooklyn. Grew up going to shul with her father and grew up not being able to use her own voice for prayer. And so she's taken a lot of those nigunim and a lot of the prayers that she learned literally at her father's feet, and is bringing them out now, sometimes in all female spaces, sometimes in mixed spaces. She'll be doing both here with us, but it's really a treat to have her coming. She's currently displaced from her home in Israel, so she's coming from New York, but she is from Israel, living in Sfat with her family. And really just, if you have not seen her or heard her music, look her up. It's on our website if that's the easiest way for you to look her up. She's really fabulous, and if nothing else, come to be in her presence. She's really very special. So sign up for that. That's in a few weeks. And okay, so I'm gonna have everybody. I just have to wait till it's actually Havdalah. I'm gonna have everybody stand up, and we're gonna surround the family up here. Tammy, you sit. Everybody else is gonna surround the family. So on Tuesday, Howard passed away. Wednesday. Yeah. On Wednesday, Howard passed away, and the family had a very private, but what I heard was very meaningful funeral on Thursday. And I'll share with you something that actually I shared with Michael, so it's not Parsha relevant to this Parsha, but was for him when his mom passed away last week, 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. That, our Torah is all about family and all about family systems. And one of the things that we learn from the end of Genesis into Exodus is that it's not just about the family that you are living in right now, but it's also about legacy. And so though your dad, your husband, your grandfather is no longer physically here with us, the fact that he lives on in everything that you will be doing, that you have already done in his physical absence through his memory, is what keeps him alive and what keeps his legacy alive and what keeps him connected to this community. And it's the reason that we have Shiva, and it's the reason that we do everything around mourning in community. Because even if we didn't get to know him in his physical life, we now get to know him through your stories and through the memories that you'll be able to share with us. So we are going to say to you the words that we say to all those in mourning. And these are words that use the name of God, Hamakom, meaning the place, because as as you sit in Shiva, you will feel very much rooted to a place, and people will come to you and listen to your stories there. But you should feel as though your dad, your husband, your grandfather's memory is really with you in all places. That's not just in this week, this month, these past few days, but always. And so we hope that that feeling of him, as well as that feeling of a connection to God and to those memories, stays with you always. So we say to you, Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'ar avalei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. And this is really the first moment that you're entering in community into that Shiva mode. For anybody who's interested, there will be a Shiva. The email went out this past, I think, Friday, about information for where to go on Tuesday night. Rabbi Clevefield will be leading, and if you're able to do so, please attend. And now we'll do Havdalah to take us into a moment of memory, into a moment of light being shown into the rest of the week. So if everyone wants to come on close. I don't know how to turn off the light in this room, so someone else does. Go for it. Ah. AJ knew. Yes.
Or AJ.
Let's go look.
That's why you darken the room.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna do this. If anybody's ever interested in getting rid of Kiddush cups from your home that are not super rusty, we'd be happy to take them off your hands. Okay. Before we all get lead poisoning. Yanai na nai 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 yanai na nai nai yanai yanai na nai nai na nai yanai na nai na yanai nai 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 yanai na nai yanai nai 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 yanai na nai yanai nai nai yanai nai yanai na nai yanai nai 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 yanai na 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 hine el Yeshuati eftach velo efchad ki ozi vezimratya Adonai vayehi li lishua ushaftemayim besason mimanei ha-Yeshua l'Adonai ha-Yeshua Alamcha virchatecha tzela Adonai tzevaot imanu Miskav lanu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai tzevaot Ashrei Adam boteach bach Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Ya'anenu V'yom Koreinu La Yehudim Hayta Ora Vesimcha Vesason Veikar Kenti Elanu Kose Yeshua Tesa Uveshem Adonai Ekra Yainanai Yananai Nainai Yainanai Yananai Nainai Yanai Nanai Nainai Yanai Nanai Nainai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei vesamim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei merei ha'esh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben קודש לכל, בין אור לחושך, בין ישראל לעמים, בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המבדיל בין קודש לכל. המבדיל בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחו, זרענו וכספנו ירבה ירבה כחול וככוכב בלילה. זרענו וכספנו ירבה ירבה כחול וככוכבים בלילה. שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב. Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi, Bimhera ve'yameinu, Yahava Mashiach ben, thank you. Bidi Mashiach ben David. Shavua Tov, everyone. See ya next week or before. This is gross. This cup is real gross. Like once I saw it in the candle, in the flame, I was like, oh, okay.
It was very wise.
Yes.
That was not a rookie move.
Yeah. Yeah.
They started off by saying the Egyptians suggested to join the Hebrews politically, which I know you were trying to interpret that in a way like instead of profiting, just letting them do their thing and profiting, and joining them. I'm not sure how, but making some effort. Okay, but it seems the opposite. It's almost like in reality, the Egyptian.
Ruchtia, thanks for visiting us.
I need to ask you something.
Okay, hold on. She's in the middle of asking me something.
The Egyptians want to get actually cut out the Hebrews, as it were, and then whenever the king says, "No, we're profiting from them. Let's just leave things as they are," and then they take him out for 3 months, and he comes back and says, "Okay, I'll do it your way." But you understand that maybe it's a translation issue, the way they said to join the Hebrews politically.
That's interesting.
I just find that sentence needs to be changed in order for this paragraph to make sense.
Interesting. Well, I'll look at it in Hebrew and see if it. You might be interpreting it 100% correctly. I wasn't looking at it in the Hebrew, so.
I just when I read it, just the English.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'll look at it. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, Bob, your turn.
Oh,